level up, get set, level up, level up, get set, level up, level up.
Hello everyone, welcome back to E20 Zone TV on this wet Wednesday. To my right is Tommy, and we're here to talk about West Ham's Premier League 2023-24 season, best and worst moments, David Moyes, which will be fun, and future under Julian Lopetegui. Tommy, how are you doing?
Doing good, mate. Yeah, day off today, so I'm just relaxing. So what better way to spend my time than jumping on with you and having a chat about West Ham?
No, mate, I know. Before we get started, Tommy, it's been a bit of a mixed season, isn't it? Let's be honest, it's been draining.
Yeah.
It's been glad it's over to a point.
Yeah, kind of a season of two halves, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, mate. It has been a draining season. So let's get into it and see what you say about this. Premier League 2023-24. Take it away, Tommy, for you.
Yeah, look, I guess results-wise, it's been an okay season. You know, we finished mid-table, which kind of tells the tale, really. We've been okay this season. First half of the season, you know, early on, we were getting some good results, and we were kind of flying high for a while there, up in sixth place, and looked like we were maybe going to have another strong season positionally and do well again, and maybe qualify for Europe again. But unfortunately, it just really tailed off massively in the second half of the season. Our results fell off, and we kind of very, very slowly tumbled down the table a bit, kind of from sixth down to ninth. So I suppose all in all, it's been fairly average as a season in the Premier League, results-wise and position-wise.
Where do you think it went wrong this year for you? Because obviously, as you say, the start of the season, we was all right. Got off to some really good results, and we looked okay. We looked pretty good at the beginning part of the season. Where's it gone wrong for you?
Again, I think it comes down to just the lack of activity in January. Like the second half of the season, especially when you have a smaller squad, is when you're going to start to see fatigue come in. You're going to get some more injuries, a lot of kind of more niggly injuries to players. It's when the season really intensifies because, you know, you're now in the latter stages of Europe as well, and the games are going to get tougher. You're going to have periods where we've got a lot of games coming. And I think it's really difficult to navigate that sometimes. And I think there was an opportunity in January for us to do some business and to kind of mitigate against a tough second half of the season. And we really completely failed to do that. We actually made the squad even thinner. And left ourselves very, very vulnerable in the second half of the season. And I think that's where we've kind of gone wrong again. And it's a shame because it didn't really have to be that way, in my opinion. And there was an opportunity to have learned from that having happened to us previously in January transfer windows, where we didn't kind of solidify the squad for that kind of push in the second half of the season to try and finish strongly. And we didn't learn the lessons for some reason, and unfortunately, we've had to pay the same price, which is that we've just fallen off at the crunch time of the season. So it's very frustrating because I think it could have been avoided.
I think the January window for me is the key to the whole thing. Like, not going out there and looking to be ambitious and trying to get some players in. Like, I know getting Calvin Phillips in is one thing, but to not go out and, you know, seize the moment, especially when we're like before 2024, we were sixth in the league, like, and there was no ambition from the ownership. The ownership basically looked at it and thought, right, where we are, it's good enough. There's no point investing. Now, do you think that Moyes was sort of sold a little bit thrown under the bus a little bit in the January window, or do you think that the ball done the right thing by not backing him in that window?
I think there's a lot going on. I think behind the scenes there. I don't think you can point the finger in one place and say that's the problem guy over there.
I agree.
I think ultimately I do think this issue is caused by David Sullivan, because he essentially fell between two stools. He put himself in this position where, at the end of last season, he brought in a director of football, which he knew didn't suit the manager that we have. The manager that we have likes to be in control. He's an old school manager. He likes to decide which players are coming and going. And then you bring in a director of football who really is not going to be able to work with that kind of manager. So that wasn't Steidten's fault. It wasn't Moyes' fault. It was Sullivan's fault.
Yeah.
He's caused that kind of friction. He's put in place this situation that can't really work. And so he should have either gotten Moyes signed up to a new contract in which he was just the head coach, where he understood his role, that he had to relinquish a lot of the responsibility of recruitment, a more kind of modern football model, if you like. And if he wasn't willing to do that, then you move on from him.
Yeah.
You bring in a manager who can work with Tim Steidten in that kind of system, who's used to doing that, who's happy to do that. Or you don't hire Tim Steidten and you give Moyes, the reins going forward, and you back him. And he kind of tried to do everything. So either get rid of Moyes, bring Steidten in, a new manager who can work together, or don't bring in Steidten, keep David Moyes. He also allowed Moyes' contract situation to run down. Nobody knew what the hell was going on, even inside the club, I think. David Sullivan probably didn't even know up until January whether he was going to keep Moyes on, offer a new contract, let him go. Moyes was saying there's a verbal agreement there, that there's a contract there for him. I doubt very much if Moyes was lying about that. I'm sure that was true. And so, again, really, ultimately, it comes down to the ineptitude of David Sullivan. It didn't, so of course, when you get to January transfer window, there's complete mayhem. So Tim Steidten wants to bring this player or that player. So you've got David Moyes doesn't fancy him, say Wilfred Zaha, for example, right? And said, look, we can bring in Wilfred Zaha for that left-hand side of midfield until the end of the season on loan. Moyes, for obvious reasons, decided, fuck no, you're not. And he still had the power of veto. So that was the end of that. And then there was a lad that we were trying to bring in from Denmark.
Yeah, Osman,
Yeah, Osman. And then you've got I don't know if it was Salthouse or whatever, or Silkman in Sullivan's ear saying, oh, he's not worth that kind of money. You don't want to be spending 20 million on him. Yeah, he's unproven. You want my player. That's who you want. Jota, my player. He's over in Saudi. He wants to come back. Buy him instead. David Sullivan, is listening to these people. David Moyes doesn't want this Jota fella either. And so the whole thing just becomes a farce where we've got players going out the door who are not being replaced because there's three different people at the club that are all pulling in different directions. And so, of course, it's a mess. And frankly, the entire blame for that lays at the door of David Sullivan.
I agree, mate. I agree. I've been saying it for ages. And the thing is, I don't keep banging the same drum about Sullivan. I don't. But the problem is, a leopard never changes his spots, and Sullivan never changes, and he always does the same thing over and over again. And people, I don't know whether people get a bit carried away thinking things will change with new managers and everything, but nothing will change until Sullivan's gone out the door. And my fear is, and I'll be honest, is that one day he's going to undermine Steidten to a point where Steidten might walk away and say, you know what, I don't fancy this anymore. Do you know what I mean? And that is my only fear now. Because
and not only Steidten, who has no real affiliation with the club or love for the club, but Sullivan is so bad he could even drive someone like Mark Noble out the door.
I agree with you on that.
Who lives and breathes West Ham.
And the thing is, Tommy, you know full well that Mark won't ever steer West Ham wrong. He's a sort of man that he lives and breathes it. He's lived and breathed it all his life. Do you know what I mean? So we've got someone in there who's one of us, who knows, who wants the best for West Ham, and he ain't looking at it from a financial point of view. He's looking at it from West Ham United club point of view. And listen, that's why I do fear with the future, especially under Sullivan's reign. But it is what it is. Before we move on, Tommy, 9th. Is that where West Ham should have been? Should West Ham have been higher? Should West Ham have been lower? Where should West Ham be?
Yeah, I think obviously, look, with any season, there's kind of it's kind of like a window in the table that you feel you should be in,
Yeah,
like a floor and a ceiling, right? Where realistically you think you're going to be operating. Um, so I think we should always have been expecting to finish top half. We've done that. But I think, like ninth, 10th would be like the floor of where we should really have been aiming for this season.
yeah,
With the ceiling probably being maybe sixth, somewhere like that. If we
agree.
had a really strong season and we did really well, we could get another top six finish. Obviously, the likes of Chelsea, Man United are struggling a bit at the moment, so they've fallen off a bit. Um, we were in there with the likes of kind of Newcastle and Villa, teams like that, where that's roughly around where we'd like to be challenging in the best case scenario, up around six. So I think, to be honest, we're probably finished towards the lower end of what we should realistically be expecting of this season. A little disappointing, I think, to finish it towards the bottom of where we thought we should be operating.
Mm,
Um, but look, the Premier League is tough, and we've seen that. I mean, Aston Villa have had the season, from heaven, really. I mean, they've been absolutely fantastic this season, and they've really peaked this season and had the best season that they could have wished for, maybe even beyond what they had wished for. They
yeah,
were probably thinking the same thing, Villa fans. If we can qualify for Europa League, it'd be great. We'll have had a good season, but they probably didn't dream they could qualify for Champions League. So they've had a wonderful season, but that won't necessarily. But they won't keep that up. You
mm,
can't do that season on season if you're a club like us or like Villa or like Newcastle. So they've kind of exceeded their expectations. Newcastle, I think, again have done roughly what they should be doing. I mean, they were in Champions League last season. It's very hard to replicate, especially
yeah,
when you have to play in those Champions League games the following season. It takes a lot out of you. It's no surprise that Newcastle's second half of the season, after they got knocked out, was much stronger than their first half.
yeah,
Champions League is tough, and it's tough to balance that and Premier League. So we're capable of doing potentially something like what Villa did this season.
yeah,
With the right manager in place, with everything going really perfect, and fair play to Emery. He did it with Conference League football as well, so fair play to him for that. But yeah, we're kind of towards the bottom end, and I think Villa exceeded. Newcastle are around where you would think they would be on an average year. So who knows? Maybe next season we get to the ones that have the dream season.
Well, we're gonna have to find out, mate. But we'll get on to this, and that is the best and worst moments this season, Tommy. Yeah, take it away.
Best moment for me this season. Obviously, look, anytime you beat Tottenham is brilliant. I know the performance, particularly
Yeah,
first half, what was not there. We were dreadful first half. It looked like we were lucky not to be already well beaten at half time. But thankfully Spurs are still Spursy, and we were able to beat them 2-1 in the end. So it's always brilliant to beat them, even though the performance was not great. But I'm going to say, like, for me, my best moment, I think, was probably being at a European game at London Stadium. It was my first time at a European game, Thursday night under the lights, and we played Freiburg, beat them 5-0. Kudus scored an absolute worldie. And I just enjoyed that night so much. I know it probably wasn't our best result of the season by any means. Freiburg are obviously a limited side, but it was just great to see us actually thrash someone and play really well, score 5 goals, and as I say, Kudus to score an absolute worldie, and to be there and have seen it in person. That was probably my best moment of the season. I know other people will have different answers. I'm sure there were games that were better wins. Arsenal obviously beat Arsenal as well. Their place, that was brilliant. Rice giving
yeah.
away a penalty was amazing. It's just a pity we didn't put it away. But that was brilliant. That realistically, that maybe is the best of the season. But just from a personal standpoint, I just loved being at the Freiburg game on a European night. It was really nice.
Worst.
Worst moment. Again, probably
There
Arsenal.
is,
That's 6-0. I think
there is a few. I'm going to be honest.
there's,
Like,
there's a few. I'm trying to filter through them in case I've missed one.
yeah.
But I think maybe the 6-0 to Arsenal. It was just, I mean, it was just so abject, and the fact it was a London derby and
See,
we turn up, didn't lay a glove on them. It's just,
I understand that, Tommy. Don't get me wrong, yeah, and they are a very, very good side. Even though I was bantering them when they lost the other day, they are a very, very good outfit. But I think there is other games this year that was really more sickening than that. I think the Fulham away game 5-0. I think the Palace game was just atrocious. Like Arsenal can do that to any team. Like let's be honest, like they was
I
on.
know, James. With all due respect, I don't think Arsenal have put 5 or 6 past many teams this season. I know they've had good wins,
Mm.
but 6 goals to concede 6 goals against any other Premier League. I don't. Arsenal.
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Arsenal didn't put 6 past Sheffield United, or
Mm.
Fulham, or Luton, or Burnley, or not even close. I mean, it's like for us to lose a London derby like that, 6-0, and to just roll over and have our bellies tickled in a London derby like that in a big
Mm.
game. To me, that was my worst feeling of the season. I mean, obviously
Yeah.
the other ones were bad. Losing
Yeah.
5 to Fulham was bad, but to have that happen at home against Arsenal in a big London derby live on TV is like that
I
was
think.
humiliating.
I,
I don't.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do understand what you're saying, but I just look at Arsenal and I think they are a very, very good side. We was in such a shit moment there, but then I do look at the games like
James, can I ask you honestly, if Moyes had come out after the game, after that 6-0, and said, "Well, Arsenal are a very good team. They
I know
can
what
do
you're
what
saying.
they need," you'd be like,
Yeah,
"Fuck off."
yeah, I
You know
know what
what I
you're
mean?
saying. I agree. I understand what you're saying, but I just look at the other ones. The other ones are a bit more like the Fulham one really irritates me. Really, really grinds into me that one because they're not yeah, they're an okay side, but we shouldn't be losing 5-0 to them. Like simple as that. Like we shouldn't be going to Fulham and losing holding 5. I think there's other games really that don't really get a lot of mention, even though they weren't heavy defeats. Like the Everton home game. Like I done a review yesterday, and we lost 1-0 to Everton, and we was absolutely atrocious in that game. Like no one really mentions that game, but like it was two crap sides, and Everton had one chance in the whole game and scored it, and it was just it was the most banker 0-0 draw going because they was both crap. But I do understand what you're saying in regards to the Arsenal
I
situation.
do actually have joint ones.
Yeah.
So obviously the Arsenal 6-0 is one. The other one for me, I think these were the 2 games that actually really, really infuriated me.
Mm.
The other one was the first leg against Leverkusen out there. Just the absolute cowardice of the way we set up, the negativity of it. We didn't lay a glove on them, not a glove. Didn't even try. Parked the bus for 90 minutes. Just made it so easy for them to keep coming at us in wave after wave after wave. And I know there's people out there, fans out there, if we'd have shithoused a 0-0, if they hadn't scored from those 2 set pieces, those 2 corners, people would have said, "Oh, it's vindicated." And I'm sorry, yeah, maybe on the scoreboard, but not in terms of football. Like to me, that was infuriating. If I had cash lying beside me where I could just walk straight out and replace my TV instantly, I would have thrown something through my television. I'm not kidding. Like
Agree.
I
I know
was,
what you're
li-
saying.
I was livid, not because we lost 2-0, because
Yeah.
of course you can go out to Leverkusen and lose 2-0, but just the way we lost it to me was just completely unacceptable. And so those are the 2 games for me this season that I really wanted to take my shoe off and put it through the telly.
Don't blame you, mate. I don't blame you. We'll move on to this man, and that is David Moyes. Now, this is going to be interesting. Tommy, 2 questions that I've asked everyone. I'm going to ask you the same. How will you sort of sum up his time at West Ham? That'd be like the second question. But the first question will be, how will you look at him this season?
This season again, look, it's no secret that I can't stand the way he plays the game. It's absolute dross. It's horrible to watch, even when you win. Sometimes, like, you're happy with a win, obviously, but the game itself, the 90 minutes itself, as a spectacle of watching it, is just Well, I hate this. Yeah, okay, we won 2-1 in the end, but who wants to fucking watch it? You know what I mean? And so it's the same story really for the last 2 seasons. I kind of break down his tenure really into 2 seasons here and then 2 seasons here. The first two were not as bad. Like the football,
Yeah.
we were still a counter-attacking team, but we were much more dynamic, and much better at hurting teams on the counter. We were also more physical. We bullied teams, which I quite enjoyed. If I'm honest, those seasons we finished 6th and 7th, I quite enjoyed the way we bullied teams physically. Teams did not like playing us. We were in their faces. We were putting the tackles in. We were closing down. We were really in-your-face team. And when we won the ball back, we were a real threat, and we were scoring for fun from set pieces. And I actually was fine with that.
Yeah.
I quite enjoyed watching us bully teams. I liked that teams hated playing against us. And it was really successful. 6th and 7th, we got to semi-final of Europa League. And I was like, I'm fine with this. So it wasn't really, it was kind of, if you want to say, Moyes ball at its absolute peak.
Yeah.
Which is very effective and isn't actually nearly as bad to watch as we've seen the last 2 seasons. Now, I don't know where it all went wrong. I'm not an insider, but it did go wrong. Last season, we really struggled badly. Forget Europe for a minute, but in the Premier League last season, we were shocking. Like we were in relegation trouble for almost the whole season, maybe with the exception of the last 3 games or whatever it was, 3 or 4 games. And it was really horrible to watch. And again, this season, even though we started off quite brightly in the first half of the season, it still wasn't great to watch. It wasn't enjoyable to watch. And the second half of the season, basically, it was like all of last season again. So I don't know where it went wrong or what happened, but that's how I break down his tenure. The first 2 seasons, I actually quite enjoyed. And I wasn't Moyes out because of the style of play, because it was very effective and very well done. The players looked very well drilled. Everyone knew their jobs, what they were doing. We had an identity, and it was working. So I was happy. But these last 2 seasons, whatever went wrong, it just became untenable that we could continue this way. Because if you're going to play that style of football, it has to be like it was the first 2 seasons. It can't be like it was last season and this season just gone, because the fans will turn. And unfortunately for David Moyes, that's what happened, including me. I was just at a point where I can't watch this anymore.
The only thing I will say, Tommy, because I do understand what you're saying there on the 2 parts. Because when you do look at it, the first 2 seasons under him were pretty good. Like the Lingard season where he come in and he just tore it up. The second season, excuse me, we should have finished 6th and we finished 7th. Yeah, but it wasn't bad.
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying. Just think about that. Think about, let's take that half a season when Lingard came in. Now, we were already having a very good season, by the way, before Lingard arrived. Think back to that team.
I was completely different team.
How good that was to watch. And now think about the last 2 seasons. It's chalk and cheese.
I agree with you on that, because when West Ham played, especially in COVID, and I do say it's quite a lot on this channel. Yeah, no one really mentions it anywhere else. But during COVID, when West Ham were playing very well, it sort of everyone got G'd up for it, because obviously COVID was an hard time for everyone. Do you know what I'm saying? And people were going through a lot of struggle at that time. And seeing West Ham play good football, and not only good football but looking good. I mean, like they look good on the break. Like I understand what people say about the Moyes ball sort of low block FC and hitting these teams on the break, but we was a fast unit back then. Like Lingard, Benrahma, Bowen, Antonio. That front 4 was doing some damage against teams, big time. The only issue that I will say is I think the moment it started to turn for me personally, and I don't know whether you agree or not, is when Alan Irvine left, Stuart Pearce left, and then you had Nevin left, and like all these sort of the backroom staff started to disappear, and then West Ham just started to sort of go backwards. And Moyes, to a point, was at a stage where he was going back to 90s football, so to speak. In the modern game, it just ain't going to work. Do you know what I'm saying? I don't know about you, whether you agree on that or not.
Yeah, I think that definitely had a detrimental effect on the whole team. But also remember, then Moyes brought in Mark Warburton
Yeah.
because he wanted to change the way we play. He wanted to evolve it into a more kind of possession-based,
Yeah.
kind of pass and move style of football, which just did not work for whatever reason. Just did not work whatsoever. Was not working. We were terrible.
Agree.
And then he ended up, in order to try and save us from relegation in the second half of that season, he ended up kind of reverting back to type and going back to the old kind of Moyes
But
ball.
who? But whose fault? Whose fault do you blame on that? Because I remember that last season, and shout out to someone who said this to me. Yeah, they turned around and said, James, right, they're bringing Warburton in to do a system that West Ham's never done, and they're going to have to try and learn it in 2 months before the start of the season, and it has to kick into gear straight away. Like it was like we were setting up to fail in that system. Like that system, you have to learn over a period of time. That has to happen over years, not over like a couple of months, because West Ham didn't have the players, and two, they didn't have the technical sort of nous of a manager who could adapt that system.
Yeah, I think it was folly. It
Yeah.
proved to be folly.
Agree on that.
I'm not sure how it came about. If Moyes felt a certain amount of pressure that he had to make us more attractive to look
Yeah.
at. I think he did. But it clearly didn't work. Like you say, you can't really flick a switch like that and have players all of a sudden play a completely different style of football, especially when you've bought players to suit the system that you prefer.
Yeah.
You know, he'd have been better off just maybe trying to figure out how to get back to the way it had been. Like, I mean, it was going fine. I'm not sure why exactly he decided to try this evolution, because remember at the time, the previous season we finished 7th. I mean, we were doing all right. You know, we got into the semi-final of the Europa League. So why he felt the need to completely switch it up, the style of play, and that's really, as you say, where the decline began. So I'm not sure if you spoke to David Moyes, would he say, look, that was a mistake. I should have tried to continue on and do it. Because at that time, like, I don't remember too many West Ham fans were complaining much about the style of play, because it was
Not at all.
very
Not at all.
effective. And we were winning games. You know, we had just beaten Sevilla, we had just beaten Lyon, and unfortunately again Eintracht Frankfurt. You know, we were still in that game in the second leg, and then Cressy got off early on. So there weren't really. I don't remember being under any major pressure, like to change anything.
What it was, what I believe, is that season that we finished 14th, people were scared. I was one of them. I was even saying this channel, I think Moyes might have to go because he's going to end up getting us relegated at this rate. And one of the lads that I speak to turned around and said to me, he said, James, if we want someone to keep us in the league, it's him. Like, because we was getting linked with Sean Dyche, Rafa Benitez, and it could have been a nightmare. I'm not going to lie. Like, and that's the problem with the owner. That's where it goes back to the owner, because the owner don't look at ambition. He looks at cheap, like the canary. Now, obviously, that season was bad. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, at the end of that season, we had a really amazing moment with Moyes in regards to Prague. Now, how do you sort of reflect on David Moyes' time at West Ham in regards of as a whole, though, Tommy? Because let's be honest, he's done one thing that no one else has done for 43 years, and that is win us a trophy.
Yeah, and I think ultimately that's what everyone will remember. So, you know, look, finishing 6th and 7th is nice, you know, but we've done that before, previous managers. You know, it's not something you really hark back too much. Or remember that time we finished 6th. You know, it's obviously you've had a good season, and happy about that. But it's not something that lives long in the memory for any particular reason. But what does live long in the memory and can never be taken away is when you win a major trophy, and we won. Let's be honest, a major European trophy. Like I say, we were starving for that, absolutely starving. And there's not a single West Ham fan that will ever forget that night in Prague, ever. It's right up there with all of our other trophies. Okay, it might not be as prestigious as the FA Cup was at the time or that, but it's still a hugely important moment in the club's history, and that's something that, whatever you think, or I or anyone else thinks about David Moyes' style of play or how things have gone or when he should have left the club, that's something that can never ever be taken away from him. That's a major achievement that a hell of a lot of West Ham managers have not managed to do. So yeah, I think for me, his tenure will always come down to that. I'll be grateful always that he brought us a trophy that we were desperately craving, and a night that no fan will ever forget where they
Yeah.
were that night, whether we were in Prague at the game, whether we were in Prague just in the city watching it, or whether they were at home in a pub or wherever it was. None of us will ever forget where we were that night. And you know that moment where Paqueta plays Bowen in and he scores, it's up for grabs now. No one, that's seared into our memories like forever.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like, not being funny.
To me, ultimately,
Yeah.
because obviously we could talk in depth and detail about his tenure at West Ham right now because it's so fresh. But in 20 years' time, ultimately what we'll remember is that night in Prague. And David
agree.
Moyes brought that. And I think we'll always look back. I think every fan, even me, the Moyes out crowd, will always look back. If I meet the guy, I'll shake his hand. And that's what I will thank him for.
Yeah, but do you think though, Tommy, that, because I'm not being funny, I will defend that trophy against anyone. When people use the trophy against Moyes and say, "Oh, anyone could have won that trophy," it proved it this year that Villa couldn't do it. Like, Villa are a better side than us. They've got better players than us.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
and
shocking from Villa. For Villa to get knocked out by Olympiacos, like I didn't
yeah,
watch either game, but they had an absolute shocker. I mean,
yeah,
Olympiacos finished third in our group.
yeah. And let's be honest, we wasn't in a good place. We managed to do them at home. So, you
I'll
know,
tell you
when I
what, if Fiorentina lose the final to Olympiacos late on, I think they'll just pack up as a club, won't they?
I think so, mate. 100%.
Look, football's
But
not
you know
for
what?
us. Fucking give
Yeah,
up.
but do you know what I'm saying though, Tommy? Like, I don't like it when people knock the trophy, because it's like we've won something and people are shitting on the trophy that we've won. Like, it's like anyone could win it, and I think it's proved it this year that no one can really win it. Right? West Ham did win it, and like we don't win much. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not being, I'm not, I'm
I'll
not
never
being,
shit on it. But now, look,
yeah,
I'm a little guilty on this. I
yeah,
have to hold my hands up. But I've always made the point when speaking to the Moyes in crowd, because obviously that's their go-to, right? He won us a
right,
trophy. You know, the suggestion being that why do you care what kind of a job he's doing when he won us a trophy? And I say, look, the trophy's great and all, but you know, it was a third-tier European trophy. Any Premier League team that's in that trophy really should be looking to go and win it. Not that they always
right,
will, but that should
yeah,
be, you know, you should be looking, if you're a Premier League team. Villa were looking to win it. They had a shocker in that semi-final. They should have beat Olympiacos. They should be
correct,
in the final.
yeah,
As I said, I didn't watch the game, so I don't know what went wrong exactly, but they've had a shocker there. And I think Emery and his players should be criticised probably by Villa fans for that, at least, that, you know, they should be in the final. So that was only my point I would make, that yes, but I'll never downplay the fact that we won it and that we won a European trophy, because if you'd have seen me that night watching that game, you'd have known what it meant to me during the game, before, during, and after the game. It
yeah.
meant a hell of a lot to me that we could go and win a trophy, like a meaningful trophy. So I'll never downplay it in that respect. I think it may have looked like I was poo-pooing the whole thing sometimes, because I was just trying to make a wider point about the Moyes in out discussion. But yeah, I don't think anyone should ever poo-poo that trophy. It was an amazing night, and like I said, that's something no one can ever take away from him. And I think that will ultimately be what West Ham fans remember David Moyes for. And that's not bad, is it? To be remembered for.
I agree. I just want to say something here. Mark, I really appreciate it, mate. Member of the channel, just donated a $5 to us. I really do appreciate it, me and the boys, man. Shout out to Mark. I agree with you, Tommy. I do. Yeah. And I understand it now. The Moyes in, Moyes out, the like thing, saga is over. It's now gone. Yeah. It is dead. The only thing I will say is, like, when I do look at Prague, right, and I do look at like moments, like that's why that photo there is here, because I look at that time and think I might never see West Ham win a trophy again in my life. Do you know what I'm saying? Because you've got to appreciate when you are given something like that moment. And let's be honest, that night we was all together that night. That's the first time ever that I've ever felt West Ham united. Like, obviously, there's been times before in the playoff finals and things like that where we've come together. But but this meant something. This meant like the club was going global. Do you know what I'm saying? Like there was players who wanted to come to our club, and you know what I mean. We're not, and me and you do agree on this quite a lot. Is we're not that little old West Ham anymore. Like we are this big side, big ground, big fan base, and I do think some people get lost. It gets a bit lost in translation. That people look at us from old, and then the new
Yeah.
generation look at us and think, well, hold on a minute. We're at Stratford. We're getting 65k a week. We're signing big money for big players. We want to be going up to that level and not going down to the level there where I'm going to be honest. Growing up as a kid, seeing West Ham struggling in relegation, I don't want to see West Ham struggling in relegation ever again, mate. So you know, it is one of them really in regards to that.
Yeah, and
Any
just to
fin-
touch on what you just said, actually, because
Mm,
just to say how important that cup win was in Prague, when you said about, you think about it generationally,
mm,
you and I don't remember 1980, the FA Cup win,
yeah,
right? When that cup final was played, I was 4. I don't remember anything of that. And there's an awful lot of fans, who were either too young at that time or weren't born, that have grown up who have never had that moment. The older fans had their moments. There's older fans there that you can talk to that can talk you through the 64 cup final or the 75 or the 80 or whatever else it is. We didn't have that moment. All we had was the memory of a heartbreak in 2006 in the FA Cup final against Liverpool,
yeah,
which was crushing, absolutely crushing, because we needed it so bad.
agree.
And for how many generations of fans now that will always have, at least will have that moment, that night in Prague, where they watched West Ham win a trophy. It's huge. It really is. It's huge.
I agree. I do. Before we move on, I think when you look at it as a whole, yeah, you look at relegation in '03, you look at FA Cup final in '06, '07, fighting to stay in the league, final day of the season, 11 when we sort of went down, like 2011, and then you sort of come up to the present day, like you know, like you've got to appreciate these moments, and that's the thing. Like when people do shit on the trophy, I look at it and I think, well, why? Why are you doing that? I understand if you don't like Moyes, yeah. And listen, Moyes and the trophy are two separate things because people say the players won the trophy. Well, fair enough. Give the trophy some credit then, because if you're going to knock Moyes, then fair enough. But it is what it is. But yeah, that has been David Moyes. Now we're coming to the future, and it is this man, Julian Lopetegui. Tommy, I did say to you, West Ham don't buy no one out of their contract. They go for someone who's a free agent, and Sullivan does what he does all the time. Up rocks Julian Lopetegui, free agent, out of work for a year. What are you saying, mate, for the future?
Yeah, look, I don't think it was anyone's first choice. But I do think there's been somewhat of an overreaction, negative overreaction to him.
Right.
I think that's simmered down a bit now, but certainly initially, I think there was a huge overreaction negatively to the kind of leaks that it looked like he would be the next manager. But I think he's been a little bit unlucky, Lopetegui, because right before we found out, we all got really excited because here was Bruno Amorim flying over to London to have talks with West Ham, and we all went, "Oh, fucking hell, Amorim! This is
Yeah.
unbelievable! A massive coup if we can get him in." Turned out it was never really likely that he was pulling a fast one, really, for his own reasons, which massively backfired on him, and I'm delighted about that because he deserved it. Because it was a shitbag thing to do. But we all got so excited, and then we found out, okay, it's very likely not happening. And then Lopetegui's name gets thrown out that he's next up. And I think people felt a bit like, oh, fuck's sake. We went from all this excitement of potentially having Amarin coming through the door, and now it's Lopetegui. And I think people kind of maybe responded a little too strongly. I mean, there was a petition and everything that was put out, like to try and force
Yeah.
people to not hire him, which to me was way over the top. I didn't sign it, didn't look at it. And so, no, he's not my first choice. But on the upside, he clearly is a very good coach. I mean, you can't knock him. I mean, I think before he rocked up at Sevilla, they had finished
Yeah.
in La Liga once in 20 years. Under him, the 3 seasons he was there, they finished fourth 3 times, and they won the Europa League. So, some of the reaction was too strong. This is not a mug.
Mm.
He managed Spain. He was actually doing a very good job with Spain. And then obviously things went a bit tits up there because of the whole Real Madrid thing. Things went tits up from then at Real Madrid, but then Real Madrid's a bit of a basket case club anyway. So, and I don't even know what went on there. Then the whole Wolves thing. So I think those things kind of damaged him in people's eyes as a coach. But look, while he's not my first choice, I think we have to be fair to the man, and I think fans will. I think West Ham will be fair to him. I think, look, if it's going to be Lopetegui, then so be it. He does actually have a very good CV. When he had this like a steady job in Sevilla and was settled, as he hopefully will be here, he did an exceedingly good job. Exceedingly good job. Sevilla were a serious side. And so, there's a potential that he can do that for us. And so, look, if it's going to be him, then it's him. We get behind him, get behind the players, and hope that he'll come in and be really, really good. And look, at the end of the day, he's just a head coach. If it goes tits up, he can be sacked just like anyone else can. But hopefully it won't into that. But I think, look, let's just give him a fair crack of the whip. I'm not super excited for the Lopetegui era, but you just never know. Sometimes it's just about the fit. When it comes to
I understand what you're saying. There's a few things I want to say really on this. First things first. I think people sort of gassed up a lot of big names over the last 12 months to think that was going to come to West Ham. Almiron, Slot, Alonso, right, to name them 3, yeah, because consistently mentioned that these people are going to come because of Tim, yeah. I think a lot of fans believe the hype, literally believe the hype, and then when Lopetegui arrives, the reality is setting to realise that they do not understand that David Sullivan runs our club. He doesn't do things for ambition. He does it for profit. Yeah. In regards of Lopetegui, though, he's on a 2-year deal, Tommy. All right. What is the ambition for next season then for him?
Well, for next season, we can't go backwards. Absolutely cannot go backwards. So in his first season, because it's his first season, he'll get some latitude from the board and from the fans, as long as it's not a disaster. So if he keeps us inside the top 10 first season and we're playing well, getting some good results, not getting any spankings like we did this season, if we're competitive, playing some decent football inside the top 10, then I think in his first season, fans will probably feel like, okay, for season 1, we'll allow it. I, like with any manager, probably the real pressure comes on in season 2 because that's when you really want to see the progression. So I think he'll be okay in the first season. I don't think it's difficult to get West Ham inside the top 10.
Great, 100%.
I think that, like I said to you earlier, that's our floor expectation. Is inside the top 10 is the minimum we should be looking at, and I think he'll be able to do that. The hope, of course, is that he'll come in and hit the ground running, and we'll have a really good season and qualify for Europe. I mean, that would be a great season. If we can qualify for Europa League, for example, even Conference League, for him, I think in his first season that would be fantastic. But I think, as I said, West Ham fans are reasonable. It's his first season. He'll get a bit of rope, for his first season. So I think he'll be fine. I think he'll be okay. For me, it's the second season when we have to really show progression and show that he's moving us in the right direction, that we're getting better, we're getting stronger. And in his second season, I think we have to be strongly pushing for a European spot.
The only thing I will say is sort of next season is what is acceptable next season, because I agree with you 100%. I say it's quite a lot on social media. Top 10, like West Ham are a big club. We should be aiming for top 10. Yeah, I don't think that's like impossible. I think that's very, very doable with the players we got. But what is unacceptable next season for you then, Tommy? I.e., when you look, how are you looking next season and go, well, that's not right.
You can hear me okay?
Yeah, carry on.
Unacceptable would be a bottom half finish, crashing out of the domestic cups early if we're playing teams we should be beating. Because that was the other thing I was going to get to actually next season. I think he needs to take the domestic cups very seriously. He'll be in a position to do it. There's no European football, so there's
Yeah.
no excuse for discarding the domestic cups. So I think, again, if the football's not good and we're not getting results, we're in the bottom half of the table, then I think at the end of his first season, we crash out badly at the domestic cups. I think by the end of this season, I think fans, a certain percentage of fans, will already be turning, and I think it would put him under huge pressure
Yeah.
in his second season. I think that would be unacceptable, and I would even say, if we're not playing very well and we finish bottom half, crash out of the domestic cups badly, I would even suggest we should probably terminate his contract at the end of the season. I wouldn't even give him the second season. That would worry
Yeah.
me. That would worry me tremendously.
I understand. I understand what you're saying because I wouldn't say about. I do get what you're saying because the second season, like this is where I don't get the contract, the 2 year deal with an option with a third year. Like basically, you're allowing him to come in, get his players in, have a free hit at a season. Then the next season he's going to try and attack it. Now, will we be in a situation come next season where we look at this geezer and we think, yeah, he's done all right, but can he get us to a European like position? And then we're 20 games in or 15 games in the following season, and there's people doing the same thing that they've done with Moyes and saying about getting him out. Like, do you know what I'm saying? I do understand what you're saying on that.
Yeah, well, ultimately, like any role, James, it comes down to how well are you doing your job.
Yeah.
And because we've got a director of football now, who'll largely be in control of recruitment, managers should be plug and play. And if we're talking about a manager, say, in his second season, and we're coming up on halfway through the second season, it's all gone tits up. I don't see any, apart from Sullivan, who hates handing out cash. Sullivan is the problem. Again, West Ham is a maze, but everywhere you go in that maze, it always ultimately ends up back at David Sullivan's door. And so
100%.
the worry again is that if we find ourselves in that situation, 18 months into Lopetegui's contract, and we're at the point where this is going really badly, he's got to go, we need a new manager in. The worry is that Sullivan will just do the same thing again. He'll just cross his fingers that he doesn't get us relegated, try and have him see out the end of his final year contract so he doesn't have to pay out the rest of his contract. And that's fully what I would expect. So let's hope we don't find ourselves in that situation, because Sullivan will roll the dice on our Premier League future so he doesn't have to pay out Lopetegui.
I agree with you. Oh, I put that off me. I agree with you 100% on that. Yeah, I do think that the Sullivan issue is a bit of a problem here. He's got someone in there who can sort of come in and do the job for now rather than later, and that's where the ambition comes into play with me. Like, is there any ambition here with Lopetegui? I think Lopetegui's like a free hit. I don't know about you, Tommy, but he's like a free hit sort of issue there with him. Like, he either comes in, he does really well, and now the question that I do need to ask you is the recruitment there. Yeah, because with the recruitment, that is also that could go one or two ways. If we bring in a load of players and they don't hit the ground running straight away, then what happens? Because then we've just recruited a load of players, and you know what I mean. How do you think that's going to go with recruitment under Steidem and him?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot smoother. I don't think the problem will be between Steidem and Lopetegui.
Yeah,
I think the problem again will be Sullivan. If Sullivan starts sticking his nose in and vetoing signings because Will Salthouse or Barry Siltman's in his ear, and they say, no, 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 I'm not signing off on this player. I think Lopetegui and Stoiton will work together fine, because they both understand their roles.
Yeah,
So it's not like it was with Stoiton and Moyes. So Lopetegui is a head coach. That's what he's coming in as. He understands that there's a director of football there in Tim Stoiton, who's his boss, and who's in charge of recruitment. And so, yes, Lopetegui will have a say. He'll have sit downs with Tim Stoiton, and they'll discuss the squad and say, okay, what do we need here? And Lopetegui will say, look, I'm just using it as an example,
yeah,
not picking on any individual player. Just for example, hypothetically, if he was to say, well, I like Safal, but I need someone who's better with the ball at his feet, who's a better passer, because we're going to be playing out from the back, trying to beat the press.
yeah,
And so I need someone who's really comfortable in possession in that right back spot. So I need a ball playing right back. And Tim would say, yeah, okay, fair enough. And then he'll go and find one. So I think that will work okay. And Tim might
yeah,
come back and say, look, here's 3 players. Let's have a look at them and see what we like. And I'm sure they can come to a consensus. Yeah, let's see if we can get that guy. So I think they'll work okay together. Again, my worry is Sullivan sticking his oar into things he doesn't know anything about, and causing issues. But as regards if we have a slow start to next season, again, because he's new in the door,
yeah,
and the signings are new signings, and we're trying to completely change the way we play, again, I think he'll get some latitude. I think if we have a slow first start to the first half of the season, obviously we'll be disappointed. There will be some concerns, but again, I think he'll get some latitude there because a totally different style of play, new players coming in. He's still just starting to implement his way of doing things. So I do think there will be some patience with it. But obviously, that will only go so far. Whether it will last an entire season remains to be seen. I think in the second half of the season, we would have to see some improvement. We would have to start to see things coming together a bit more,
yeah.
for us to think, okay, second season, we can see that we're kind of moving in the right direction. So I think he'll get some latitude, but only so much. I think second half of the season we would have to see an improvement.
The only thing I will say to sort of round this up is, how do you think it's going to go with Tim Styling this year? Because this is the year really now where he's going to have to shine.
Yeah.
He's definitely going to have to shine now. Right, there is no, like, he done all right last year with Mo and Alvarez and whoever whoever brought them in, whatever. But this summer it's all on Tim. Yeah. Now I do believe, this is my own personal opinion, that people do blow a bit of smoke up Tim Stein's arse and think he's the Messiah all of a sudden. Now, for me, this is the summer. He has to go out and get 7, 8 players of quality to come in and hit the ground running. It's a big summer for him, isn't it, mate? Let's be honest.
Yeah, it's huge, especially with everything that's going on. Obviously, there's a squad revamp which is required. We have the second oldest squad in the Premier League. We've got to bring in some more younger players. They're obviously going to be a different type of player.
Yeah.
Like, we won't be signing a Souček type player for Lopetegui. It's just not his kind of player. So yeah, he has a big job on, and he doesn't have to hit on every player. I don't think there's anyone in world football who hits on every signing, but he has to hit on enough of them to be considered to be doing a good job. Enough of the players have to be good players, good signings. Obviously, there will be some that don't work out for whatever reason. But yeah, this is where Stoiton has to show that if he's going to have that kind of control over recruitment, he's going to have to show that he's worth the money and the investment that the club are putting into those players. Yeah, I mean, like you say, if he gets it really wrong, if he signs 6 or 7 players and they're not working out, then immediately major question marks are going to be asked, and I think the club are going to be looking at Stoiton already and his future at the club. Say, okay, do we really want to trust this guy with all of our transfer kitty next summer?
Yeah, I think he'd be fine, but there's always the risk. Like when you're, like, I remember when we left Upton Park, went to Stratford. I know the person who's in charge there ain't nowhere near on Steinen's level, but obviously Steinen now is in the frame now because now Moyes is out of the picture and people have looked at Moyes. Now people are going to turn and go, right, Tim, this is down to you. So I do understand that, and I think he has got a massive job on his hands. I just want to get to this comment. I hope this man's well. We have no Europe this season. I doubt 7 or 8 players are coming in. I believe there is, mate. I believe we're getting at least 7, at least. When you look at the bench, we've got no bench. We've got no left winger. Our centre halves are all over the place. I think don't be surprised if we're going to go in heavy with like trying to get at least 7 to 8 players.
I think I understand where Wetty Fap is coming from.
Yeah.
I think it does make it. It actually is probably very helpful for Lopetegui that we don't have European football, because that would put real pressure on the squad, because you've got to have a squad if you're playing in Europe. If you've just got Premier League and domestic cups, I think it takes the pressure off a little bit as regards to how many players do we have to bring in. Obviously, we do need a few. So I think it will be in the region of maybe 6 coming in, because I suspect that Cresswell will be staying, that he'll get a new 1-year deal.
What do you think on that?
I don't think we're going to clear out all of the older players this season. I think, I would imagine the aim this season would be, okay, let's improve the first team as much as possible.
Yeah.
Which in turn will almost automatically improve the bench, because maybe players, again, not picking on anyone, say, for example, Souček, who played very regularly every week under Moyes, maybe Lopetegui doesn't fancy him exactly because he wants to play out from the back, and he's not suited to that. So now we've got a Souček on the bench. So I suspect maybe 6 or so players. I think he might use some youngsters on the bench as well. I think Casey, I think we'll sign 2 centre backs, but we're not going to get rid of all of our centre backs. So I think, we're going to have a stronger bench there at centre back, and so I think probably maybe 6 or 7 players I think will come in, because I don't think we're going to get rid of as many players as people think.
I don't know, mate. I don't know, Tommy. I can see a major reboot here. Like when I look at it, I'm going to get
over this summer and next summer. I agree.
Yeah.
I think by the time we start the following season, then I think we'll have a lot of different players. But I don't think we need to go crazy this summer.
I think this summer you have to look at the defence straight away, because I think the defence is a major problem. I look at the attack line. I think you need a left-sided winger. Now, if it is Wesley who's coming in from Brazil, then great. We need a centre forward at this club, because if Antonio goes down, we've got no one. Literally, Danny Ings ain't worth the time of day, and Maxwell Cornet for me just isn't there. The Cresswell situation, people have all of a sudden changed their tune a little bit. Like I don't know about thinking giving him a 1-year rolling contract. Because the way I look at it with Cresswell, Tommy, is that he's been a good servant to West Ham, but now West Ham people have been crying out for Moyes to play the youth. Give the youth a go. Give the youth a go. Give the youth a go. Now, all of a sudden, Cresswell's going to stay for a year, and everyone's going, "Oh, yeah, it's the right move." I just don't understand. There's the right move from one hand, and then on the other hand, it ain't the right move, right, with Moyes. So,
look,
what do you make of it with Cresswell?
On a personal level, I'd rather move Cresswell on.
Great.
I'd rather release him and use Ollie Scarles as the understudy to Emerson for next season. That would be my preference. But I can understand from a Lopetegui, Tim Stoyton perspective of saying, Joe, let's keep him here for 1 more season as the backup for Emerson, because they're probably looking at, okay, what are we going to buy here with however much money we have to spend? I don't know what that is. But they're probably looking at saying, okay, we want 2 centre backs. I think we'll sign 2. We want 2 centre backs. We need a left winger. We need a striker. We're probably going to spend quite a bit of money on those 4 positions. That's probably going to take a real chunk out of our wage budget, or out of our war chest.
Yeah.
And after that, what else do we want to look at positionally? They're probably going to want to look at maybe a midfielder, depending on what Lopetegui wants to do stylistically. Obviously, Calvin Phillips has gone back. I think we're going to sell Flynn Downs to Southampton. He's probably going to think, okay, Freddie Potts isn't quite ready. I don't know what he thinks about Ward-Prowse. So he's probably going to want someone to go in beside Alvarez, more of a ball playing box to box type, I would think. So that's 5 first team players. He might be looking at, say, right back as well.
I agree.
That's 6 first team players that he's going to want to try and get in. That's going to eat up pretty much all of the transfer budget, I would think, even with the sales. Now we're going to have the sale money for Kerrer. We're going to have the sale money for Flynn Downs. I think so.
Ben Rama.
Ben Rama, if Leon make that a permanent deal. Plus, obviously, then if Paqueta does go, we're obviously going to have the Paqueta money, which we can invest. So it depends at the moment. I think we're looking at maybe 6 first team players that they're going to want to bring in. After that, I mean, you're not looking at too much money left in the kitty to try and strengthen the bench. So it's like, do we want to get rid of half the bench, and leave us with a lot of youngsters? And I don't think they probably want to do that. So I understand maybe saying, let's just keep Cresswell 1 season, give him 1 year.
It's just a drop in ability, though, Tommy.
I know, but do you not think, James, actually, when he did come in for Emerson this season, he did all right?
Well, my argument is every time Cresswell plays, he's always been a good player for West Ham. Not going to take that away from him, but he's been very good. But he's in a position where he's always going to be up against pace. And this geezer gets done for pace consistently over and over again. Now, every time a team looks at West Ham, they target our right back and left back because they both are no good against pace. Sufal's no good against pace. And if Cresswell plays, Cresswell's no good against pace. And that is the problem. That is the problem. Like, if someone said to me right now, like, go out and get a left back, I think we do need a young up and coming left back. I don't think Cresswell.
I just don't think it's a priority for this coming season.
I know what you're saying.
If we could buy every position we wanted, we had infinite money. We can buy a great player here, a great player there, a great player. That's fine, unless they can find a gem. Unless Tim Stuyton's got a gem somewhere to say, look, this kid's only going to cost 10 million and
I understand it from that side. Don't get me wrong. I agree with you 100% on that side. Like, it's not like I get it from a sort of a financial side of things. There is other priorities, but I do look at it that if Emerson goes down and we've got to put up with Cresswell for the vast majority of next season, that is a major problem because, like, for all the teams that we're going to be up against, 9 times out of 10, they've got flying wingers.
I think if that happened, we'd probably bring in a left back in January, either on loan till the end of the season or buy one that we were going to buy in the summer, try and get him then. But to be fair, Emerson hasn't been particularly injury prone. He's played a lot of games for us. He's been mostly available. So I don't think there's too much of a worry about Emerson with regards to injuries. So I can understand it, why they might keep Cresswell around for 1 more season. Like I said, if it was me, I'd release him and I'd actually say, look, if Emerson goes down, we're going to put Ollie Scarles in. He's a very good youngster. I remember that game he played out in Romania. Not the season just gone, but the one before, in Conference League. It was a dead rubber game, but he played in that game. He was the best player.
I thought he was brilliant in that game, mate.
Brilliant. So I would use Ollie Scarles next season. Be a good opportunity to see what he's got, have a proper look at him, get him training week in, week out with the senior squad. That'll do him the world of good. But look, if that's the way they want to go with Cresswell, I understand it. But I'd prefer Ollie Scarles be given a chance now, to be honest.
Final question, because obviously it's under Lopetegui's reign now. El Naziri. I think ever since I've done this channel, every summer I've talked about fucking El Naziri every time. What do you make of him, Tommy? Is he a right fit for West Ham, or do West Ham need to go for someone like a Solanke or even an Ivan Toney, for instance?
Yeah, I think I suppose the question here is a Nesri a Lopetegui player, and obviously he played for him, in Sevilla.
Yeah.
So they obviously have a relationship. Every summer it's like, oh, En-Nesyri, and I kind of brushed it off up until now, but I can't brush it off now because Lopetegui is the incoming manager, and so it's no. I'm hoping it's just lazy journalism.
I hope so. Yeah.
West Ham need a striker, and En-Nesyri played for him at Sevilla. He's been linked with West Ham more than once before, so they chucked the En-Nesyri name out again. I don't think it has any legs, personally. I'm calling bullshit on this one. I think it's lazy journalism. It was an easy link to make. You know, we've been linked with him previously more than once. He played for Lopetegui at Sevilla. Oh, let's put out story West Ham interested in
Yeah.
him again. I think it's just lazy journalism. I don't think we're interested in signing En-Nesyri personally. So that's my hope. But I can understand why they kind of put 2 and 2 together, you know, and got 5 probably. But I'm not worried about that one. I don't think we're going to sign En-Nesyri.
For me, go and get Ivan Toney out of Brentford, mate. I know it's a lot of dough. I think it's about 45 million they want for him. I think it is currently right now because his contract's winding down.
If it's 45 million, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, it is. Like I think that man. People got this thing about his attitude, but DeCanny had an attitude, and look how he turned out. Do you know what I mean? Many other players have had attitudes at this club, and they've come to the club and done well. Or Solanke. Now, a couple of the boys that I know said this on Spaces, said, James, we should go and get Solanke, and I laughed at him. Now, I'm the one being laughed at. So, I think he's all right. I think he's all right, Solanke. I think he'll be a good player for us. Tommy.
Yeah, he's got 19 goals for Bournemouth. I mean, that's astonishing.
Imagine him in our team without supply. So that'd be very, very good. Tommy, it's been a pleasure to have you on, mate. Any final words that you want to say and shout out your social media links and where they can find you, mate?
Yeah, if you want to follow me on Twitter, if you're a West Ham fan, I will follow you back. It's at Tomster36. I also have a show on Friday night, 10 p.m. on West Ham Network called The Late Late Show. So if you want to tune into that, if you've got no social life and you're Billy No Mates, I'm your man on Friday nights at 10 o'clock. But other than that, just want to say thanks for having me on. It's been a fun discussion. Enjoyed talking about it. So appreciate it, James. Thanks, mate.
No worries at all, mate. Anytime. You're an absolute gentleman. Me and Tommy clash on a lot of things, but we are friends. So it's all right. Do you know what I mean? It is what it is. Listen, I'll be back either late tonight or tomorrow. I've got loads of people coming on towards the back end of this week, and it's the bank holiday weekend, and I am not doing nothing on that. So yeah, it is what it is. Thank you very much for Tommy for coming on. Really do appreciate it as always. Smash a like on the video. Subscribe to E20 Zone TV. That's me done. That's him done, and we're out of here. Bosh.
Level up, get set, level up, level up, get set, level up.